Alright, I'll assume that's a yes.
I'll say that's a yes.
Alright, cool.
Alright. I'm representing Barkan and all that.
Hey, what's your name?
My name's Nate. Nice to meet you.
I'm Justin.
Nice to meet you, Justin.
I'm representing Arak.
Okay, nice. Now, I know that we've talked a little bit in the past, and we're kind of new to the table, which I think is good for this situation. So I think I'd want to just hear out your ideas first. Just your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, clearly we got two separate areas of which we really need to focus on. I'm so sorry, I forgot to write the time.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I understand.
I understand that this is a timely discussion, and if we don't get done,
Yeah.
we ultimately know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I would say, I mean, overall, I'm going into this with a mindset, I really want to work with you. However, I mean, we do have a territory at stake.
Yeah.
With that said, there's a good amount of land. I mean, either way you cut it, you have one piece of land that could be good with resources, the other good with steel. So, I mean, in a way, I would really like to come up with some way of negotiating where we both are able to divide it up. I don't want to screw up your country, and I feel like to continue our relations, we're going to need this to be a collaborative effort, and I'm not here to screw you up, man. I don't want to go to war.
Neither side. Okay, we don't want that, and I don't think a majority of the people want it either. And I know that things have been a little caustic in the past. So really, the biggest thing for me is the people. And so we've had a massive amount of sickness coming through. So I'm going to refer you to Area 1 on the map.
Yes.
Whenever we have that, that area, our people can avoid the sickness because it's got, as you well know, it's got the natural foods and fruit of the land and such. And we're able to boost our economy so that we can actually pay to keep the people well and such. But without it, just our food production goes so far down. And we had, I think, written in my notes here, we had a massive bout of rickets, especially with our children. And we eat really on our central diet along with the preserves, and it's just without that area we lose so much of it. As well as our pulpwood factories. I know you mentioned steel, and we've been buying steel for such a high price from Cardin that it's really hard to balance everything. So I don't want to split the people in that area because, just like you're set on your hometown, I'm set on mine. Well, they don't want to leave, and they've got people from both of us. So what I wanted to put on the table was we have some intelligence that am I correct in saying that you guys want to get more into steel production?
Not necessarily. Okay. I mean, you're talking to me about your people and where they're at, and I mean, if I were to add my 2 cents, I mean, we're in the same exact position that you are in. I mean, my people are experiencing famine. No one's really eating. Even the wealthy people are hurting. I mean, I'm at a basic necessity point of which I need some resources, and if not, be frank, my people are going to die. I mean, whether if it's through being hungry or through war with you. Yeah. I mean, and that's a bottom line. So I understand it's tricky for both of us, but I do see us having similar problems. So, I mean, that's where I do feel like since we do have so much in common, I mean, I'm really thinking our best bet would be to split things pretty equally.
The reason that I'm wary of a split is I've been down in that area 1, especially in the valley where all of our people are, and your people as well. And of course they're flourishing because that's a beautiful area, and they are very against a division, which I'm in the same boat you are, that I'd rather divide it and both of us get it. But they're just so against, honestly, threatening revolt for a subdivision of a town. I mean, it's just it seems that our intelligence just says that there's no way for a division there.
And I mean, furthermore, I mean, with that said, I do see that as an issue, but I also see that as something that we're going to have to go against what people want sometimes, and I, from my understanding, some of that territory is really unmarked. I mean, some of those people really have no allegiance to either of us. So, I mean, if one of us has to go in and take it, I mean, I'm thinking the cost between our countries, having a small territory revolt is not the biggest of my concerns right now. I'm way more concerned with us two having war with each other. And having a small territory and small townships, to have them upset, I mean, naturally, not everyone's going to be happy, but let's be realistic. What's better, a small amount of people being unhappy or two countries being in full-out war?
And that's very obviously a big thing, but when you look at this small area, that accounts for a majority of our resources. So if they revolt, they can hold off the resources, which is where my concern was.
I mean, but who really gets the upper advantage there? I mean, are you saying that you would be more qualified to handle that situation than I would be?
Well, that's not what I'm saying at all. And I think this stems from we just don't really have that much of a notion on what your situation is. Now, I've been through why my people need this area, so how about we go through the details of why yours needs it?
I mean, similar to you, as I was already adding, man, my people, specifically children, are dying off thousands at a time. Frankly, if I'm not able to feed my people, I'm not even going to have any generation to fight you guys. I mean, and that's in a way that I could definitely see in a way that if we were to split up these resources between Area 1 and Area 2, I might be able to scratch your back, you could scratch mine. I mean, even though I could take a territory, that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't have other agreements within it, meaning that I could provide you with potential food. And this in a way that, I'm not trying to be too socialist or too... in my opinion, I just think we got to do what's best utilitarianly, whatever's best for the greater good, and that's for both of us, man.
I could agree with that. I know that like our exports mainly focus on the pulpwood and such in that area that's naturally replenishing. Where are you guys getting most of your resources from? Because that's just something that I'm not clear on. And
all right, so my biggest concern with this area is I also need the wood. I need the timber. I mean, that's just very basic to even expand or build anything in the future as well. You can't expand without timber. I mean, that's just a basic way of just having housing. Other than that, what interests me about this area would be the grapes. And that would be for eating as well, with juices as well. That is something you haven't mentioned. Additionally, potatoes seem to be the best resource and potatoes as well. I mean, that's the basic part of my people's diet. And if they're not able to get potatoes, then they're not going to eat. And same thing with the grapes. I mean, they're going to eat that as well. That's definitely going to be one of my exports. With that said, steel, I know you had mentioned steel. Where do you really land on that? Is that something that you're interested or interested? I understand you being a country without many options. Something like steel is very rich in resource, rich in potential wealth that you could get from that. I mean, where do you really land on how you need it?
Mostly, we don't want to make it, and that's kind of the thing. Is we want that area one for like the pulpwood and the fruit preserves, which is one of our major exports in the fruits rather than like the potatoes and such, which you mentioned, and the lumber, housing. We really just need that export of pulpwood that's naturally replenishing there without decimating that entire stock. So as far as coal goes, we're really just paying an arm and a leg to Cordan to get it. I mean, they take so long to get it that we're paying more to export it in.
Yeah.
So I was under the impression that you guys might be wanting to go more into steel production, which one of the things I was going to set on the table is if you were interested in that, we'd be willing to set up a deal where we exclusively buy from you, which would boost our resource to steel at a bit of a more reduced cost, but that would also boost your economy with a guaranteed revenue by a signed treaty contract of sorts. It's not necessarily a business alliance, but it's more of an alliance between, it's an international,
and through trading and such.
And I think that's stronger than a business, because it's not we're trading with you because you've got the best price. It's because we are loyal to you, and we're trying to help each other out. Because at the end of the day, though we fight, we're in such close proximity to each other, and we're just surrounded by such a big world that we kind of got to stick together on this, I think.
I mean, to cut it simply, though, I just can't see, I mean, in a hypothetical proposal that you're getting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you really want me to take over Area 2 and you want to have Area 1 and you're just trying to cut it even at that. I mean, is that what you're kind of saying? I'm just trying to gather exactly what approach you're trying to take, because, I mean, just before you continue, I just want to make one thing clear. If I'm not able to reach any of Area 1, it doesn't matter how much Area 2 I have. I'm not even going to get you any steel because my people are going to be dead. I literally don't have food right now. So, I mean, while it's nice to think about the hypotheticals of production and resources that I could give you and any agreements, I mean, obviously that sounds great. But, I mean, bare minimum, if my people are not eating, I'm not going to be able to give you anything.
Well, yeah, and I understand that. And the reason that offer was on the table is just due to the lack of communication between our countries. Is we just don't know each other because we don't want to. So I do agree that I don't want to put your people in that position, because those people are just as close as my people are.
Sure.
And we don't want to do that to you, obviously. So I think this is going to be, obviously, you've suggested this, but this is going to be a very tricky negotiation. But I don't think, I think that I could get along with you just fine, but I'm more worried about the higher ups in both of our countries just not trusting each other. But I think a way to bridge that, and also a way to get both of our problems, is tell me, what resources do you want from Area 1?
Yeah, as I stated before, I mean, obviously I need the timber. Additionally, potatoes, just for my people to eat. That's not even necessarily an export. That's just a bare minimum that I need for a resource. Other than that, to go above and beyond, I mean, obviously the grapes for eating, as well as making juices and using that as an export. However, grapes are great for eating and whatnot. However, that's not enough to be a full sustainable diet. You know what I mean? Like bare minimum. I will also need potatoes, and I will also need timber. I mean, there really isn't any resource I can absolutely just say I'm not interested.
And that is obviously understandable with that. We need the pulpwood, because if I don't, I have it here that I'll have 5,000 employees laid off. We already have rickets coming on, and so with laid off employees, there's less food, obviously. What I'm thinking is, since neither of our nations are in a place that we can completely fall back on each other right now, I think I'd call that an area of neutrality, where neither of us micromanages, but both of us get the resources that we need. So if we put it in the treaty that you get the potatoes that you're desiring, and we split the timber that are in the mountains in half,
sure.
Because I need the pulpwood, you need the timber itself. If the trees that lend itself more to pulpwood go to us, and the timber goes to you, but in the treaty we have to put a clause that we make sure that we don't take enough. We're going to put I'd like to put a limit on how much we can take, because I know that both of us want to grow, but there's no point in growing if we wipe out that entire resource there.
Can I take a look at your map just to get a better understanding?
Something I'm going to put on here is the reason I brought up steel, and this is a show of goodwill, is that you have a massive coal deposit right near you. We just found this out. So we'd be willing to forfeit our rights to Area 2 in that area if you so desired to delve into the steel production, which would greatly help. And it's this massive coal deposit. So in Barkan, we have to go all this way to get to our coal. Your coal deposit is way more massive and it's way more accessible. And we're willing to give you rights to that if you would just sell us coal or steel at a reduced rate, because like I said, we're being murdered.
And I'm more than happy to work with you on that as well.
And like I said, I think that both of us desperately need Area 1, and it's not as simple as splitting it down the middle, which is why I'm offering more of a Switzerland like area of neutrality.
So, in a way to actually apply that to our agreement, would we, in essence, just have open territory then, with the assumption that neither of us are going to be hostile and want to take it over? I mean, at that point, my only concern is that having open land, I mean, worst case scenario, if something happens, we're just going to inevitably fight over it.
Well, here's the thing about that. We both need the resources desperately at this point.
I agree. Absolutely. Bare minimum, it seems like every single resource, I mean, other than the fact that I may be slightly more interested in the grapes, other than that, that seems to be the only resource that I really need that you might not necessarily need. However, we equally need potatoes, and we equally need the wood and the timber and the pulpwood and all of that, from my understanding.
In all honesty, we're more interested in the fruits than the potatoes in the tuber area of that region.
Okay.
So you could even take instead of a 50-50 stake on the potatoes, you could take a 3/4 to quarter, where you'd get 3/4 of that resource. The pulpwood timber, which isn't going to be that entire forest, is my concern. So if we write in the agreement, I just don't. I know that war is on the horizon no matter what, because this is honestly such a tricky situation. But I don't see a way where one of us gets this where the other one doesn't want war. So I'm thinking and both of us micromanaging is just going to tear the region apart. So I think if both of us agree to share the resources but neither micromanages it, I think that keeps both of us at least on a path towards possible trust. Because we will never survive and never avoid war if we don't start building trust between us. So now, I'd be worried about other countries coming in for the resources. Like, right now we have no issues with Cordan, but what if they decide that since we haven't taken a stake in it, they want it? I think we could agree to protect our resources as a joint military operation if anybody were to threaten it, which benefits both of us, because these resources really, like I said, both of us, our people are going to die without them. So I'm thinking if we just, you need the potatoes more than I do. I need the pulpwood desperately and the fruit preserves desperately, because we have enough to get by that I think that we'd be willing to give on that land. You're more than welcome to this coal deposit, selling the steel at a reduced rate. I was thinking if what we're getting it sold for now is $25 a ton for steel, or $5 a ton for coal.
Yeah, same.
Okay, both of us could benefit by us buying it from you at like maybe a third of that rate, but then you have this coal deposit that rivals their business.
All right. So before we continue, I just need to know this: what is your bottom line? I mean, what are you really getting out of Area 1? And I mean, what?
My bottom line for Area 1 is honestly the fruit preserves and the pulpwood. I need a little bit of the potatoes and such.
Sure. And I'm willing to work out any agreement. I mean, let me tell you mine.
Yeah.
My bottom line is, frankly, I like to keep it neutral, and I appreciate all your ideas of keeping this very collaborative. I think the best solution would be me to potentially take the territory itself, and I get you the resources. I mean, I'm willing to work out any agreement, but it seems as though that's already kind of what you're leaning toward, just not in a specific way that I'm necessarily keeping the territory. But if we're able to split it up in any such way, I mean, I'm more than happy to trade you the resources you need, and vice versa. I mean, with that said, I'm also more than happy to consider the steel and what's at stake with the coal. I mean, all of it here is obviously on the table, but I think it would be best if we decisively split it up in a way.
I disagree, because I don't think that there is enough trust between our nations to be able to split it in any way. And I honestly, war is happening if I walk away from here giving up any of Area, or not any of Area 1, but giving Area 1's control to you. I can't do anything about that. and that's their line, and that's not my personal one. I just want my people to be okay, which is why I was sent here. I just want my people to live. But if we give you that area 1, they do not want it micromanaged, and so there will be war if you take that, and that's not a threat. That's more of a guarantee because they can't lose it.
But with that said, I mean, any agreement of which we previously discussed would still.
Well, on the flip side, how would your people feel about us micromanaging it?
But not in a way that micromanage. I mean, it's in a way that we would make an agreement together, and it would continue to stay that way. I mean, ultimately.
Now, how is that agreement any different from both of us leaving in a neutral territory so that nobody has a stake over it? Because these people have already been operating just fine.
I mean, I appreciate your concern there. I just think to have it more set in stone. And with that said, I'm not trying to take all of Area 1. I mean, by no means. I'm just trying to go in there and just say, hey, look, this is all mine. I'll work out an agreement. I'll give you whatever I don't want.
Yeah.
By no means I mean that whatsoever. I just want to make that clear because maybe I'm coming off that way, and I'm not trying to screw over your country. I mean, the whole reason why we're here is to avoid war.
Yeah.
So I just want to get that out of the way. I just see it as my biggest concern is keeping it neutral. I think over time, if we don't have an agreement right now, it's inevitable that one of us is going to want to take it over. And by keeping it neutral, I mean, frankly, I just don't have enough trust with your nation to just work out a deal where we're just keeping it neutral and then taking what we need. I think it would be best managed with the communication open and with actual contracts made in a way that there are terms of it. If I did take over any part of the territory, I will still get you the resources you need. I just would much rather that than further on any confusion of which you misunderstood, thought that was your territory, and that would ultimately lead to war anyway. We're hashing out the problems right now.
Yeah,
I guess is what I'm putting on the table, rather than the inevitable.
I think that the inevitable is the fact that we are 2 different countries, and all you're doing if we split this is bringing our borders closer together, which is more of an issue in my opinion, because then you have a farmer step over the line, and he says, "Well, that's my farmland." And then if he's refusing to give it up, if we step in and try to get that, we're still micromanaging that territory the same. So I'd rather, while these people, and that puts these people in this area in contention where they're already living with limited contention that's not going to affect any nation. So I would say that this is more sensibly left as a point of agreed neutrality, because that leaves this expansive area where if you cross this line, I don't really care because it's not encroaching into my territory and I'm not encroaching into yours. So leaving.
I mean, at that point, these people could take it over for their own territory. If we don't have set boundaries.
But that would be set in the contract.
Well, so I mean, I just want to reference history because I feel like the best way to really analyze what could happen is look at what has happened previously. And I'm just thinking about, I mean, any developed nation, any nation that, even countries that really don't have their act together still have a set line between their country and the border of the other. I do not want this to turn into and not to say it's nothing against the people, but like in the Middle East, for example, plenty of area of which one could say, even a city like Jerusalem, is it the capital of Israel? Is it their town? And ultimately, by having any gray area, it's just.
However, whenever they try to set the gray area, it becomes a war immediately. It's like a spark in an ignition chamber.
Yeah, but if we have an agreement right now, we're already preventing that. And
but
that's
these
what I'm
people
saying.
don't care about our agreement. This is their home. So if you say now this part of you follows Barkan's laws and this part of you follows Arak's laws, never going to happen.
But at that point, by that logic, though, if we don't set any precedent at all, they already have the upper hand saying, look, get off my territory in general. I mean, at that point, we're just being way too.
I'd say that the reason that I'm proposing a neutral territory is for this reason. Our laws are different. That much is clear. We both know that. So if you try to get half of the population to follow one set of laws and half of the population to follow the other set, that's just too much of a dichotomy there. So if you leave this as a neutral territory, it's overseen by both of us. So the point is, all our stake is not in control, it's not in power, it is only to get our resources and get out. And if those people ever try to hold off our resources from us, then it's both of us on them. Now you have two nations instead of one taking care of the resource. However, I'm trying my hardest. I know that there's no trust. I get that. But bringing the border closer will not create trust. It will just create more contention. And I get that you're trying to do the best for your people, and I'm trying to do the best for mine. But in the end, I think that if we try to do this as a neutral territory, and if we stay involved in trying to trust each other with the resources, that starts a longer road to trust. The whole point of Jerusalem is that there is no trust between the Orthodox Muslims and the Orthodox Jews. They have no trust for each other, and that comes to a cultural thing. However, we do not have a religious stake in this. We do not have a political stake in this. We just have well, I guess it's a little bit of a political stake because it's a resource, and resource falls into politics. But we just have a basic needs thing in this. And I think that even if you and I came to an amiable agreement today, that's still, we are right on the border here. And if you look at borders, all that ever happens when we define borders is people build walls, and then the walls get torn down by whoever's got the bigger stick.
Okay, so I mean, just to spin it back on you, then I mean, we're talking so much about territory, and your biggest concern with borders and all of that. Why would you have that attitude, but then open up with saying that I can just have area too? I mean, at what point? And not to say you outright said that, but the way your logic, it really seemed like you were tiptoeing toward, hey, I'm not really as interested in this area. Why is it that you're okay with me to settle with me claiming an area, and then the area of which we both need, it's just somehow sacred and off limits? I just don't really understand your logic, because, I mean, at the end of the day, although it's significantly less people, there are people at stake in Area 2 in general, and there's another country involved with that as well. So, I mean, there's definitely, like, I don't know, I feel like you are undermining potential problems with Area 2 as well. I mean, we've only talked about Area 1 for probably 20 minutes of this whole discussion.
I agree. Area 2, I had no intelligence of any people being there, mostly because I don't know of any Barkans being there. If it was, then it would be up for
and there are neutral people there as well. So that's why
that I had no intelligence of.
Yeah, well, I mean, and just to make it clear, I mean, not to say it's going to be as many people as living in Area 1. Obviously, Area 1 is a lot more habitable. But, I mean, the fact that there are people at stake in Area 2, it really was unsettling to me that you were just completely okay with me having Area 2, and then you just kind of trying to find your best, solution for Area 1 just for yourself.
Well, to clarify, Area 2 has until recently been unknown to us, so all we knew about was pretty much flyovers to see the resources. We didn't see any significance is the wrong word, any settlements that was made aware to me. So if they knew that without telling me, shame on them. If there are peoples in Area 2 that are neutral, I say then that makes my position even more sense, because you have you have our ocean here, but then if you have two nations protecting our sovereign borders between Jordan, that means that we don't get pushed around, because I think you and I can agree that we're trying to be up-and-coming nations. We can't do that on our own. If you look at any of the major nations,
like 1 minute left.
we're at one nation. I think we were allowed to go over 30.
Oh, are we?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, okay.
That was a misnomer in the agreement. I will say, if there are neutral peoples in Area 2, as you say, which I honestly, truly had no knowledge of, then that area from Cordan to the ocean should be neutral, protected by both of us, because we have, not that I don't trust Cordan now, but I know that when it comes to nations, wars break out. And I think that it's just best for us to try to, we clearly have distrust of each other's nations. That is just bad blood from years of the past. But by drawing borders, we're not addressing the root issue. All the root issues come down to trust between the nations, and we think that we're different. We need the same resources. We want the same things. I don't think that we're going to get that if we draw a border and say, here's how we're splitting it. Because if you look at if you look at children, when children share a meal versus splitting a meal, it's always different. If you split a meal, they're going to complain that the other one got the bigger part. The pasture's always greener.
We can still split it up in a way.
However, somebody's always going to say that the pasture is always greener. But if you share it and both have access to everything, but you keep a written agreement saying this is, because it's just that human psyche of, oh, that belongs to him, I want it. Rather, this is shared. That I know that like you already brought up a little bit more of a socialist utilitarian in your opening spiel. I agree with you. This more follows towards that venture, because I don't want to take from you. I don't want to take from me. And I don't think where we are at as two countries, I don't think that we can split this in a way that both will be happy. But I think that we can share it in a way that both will accept it without war. And if war comes on the horizon, then we're back to where we started, but we didn't lose anything, and we possibly gained years of prosperity to get ourselves out of a hole that we're already in. As far as sickness, as far as economy, as far as our international relations. So if we build each other with our coal, our steel, our timber, our food, we get to a better spot where we have the ability to prosper together. And then we can start talking to Cordan about maybe working with them. We're building trust between two nations, and we're just trying to survive in a world that's full of super nations that could easily steamroll us. If we try to join together, and I know that there's bad blood, but that bad blood will keep going if we keep drawing lines. And there's always another line to be drawn. So if you try to create some neutral territory saying, I agree that I will not take this from you, and you agree that you will not take this from me, that's not drawing lines. That's saying that I trust you not to screw me on this. I trust you to share this with me, and we agree to jointly protect both people. Then we both have a stake in these neutral parties, and honestly, they're not a threat to us because they have two countries taking care of them, and then they have, for these people in Area 2, they don't have to worry about Cordan coming in on their coal deposit that could possibly make their area flourish because they've got two countries helping them out. So I think that is just, honestly, I care about all the people in this area because they come, I live right along the border. So this area is my home. I don't want us to fight war over it because these people, being right at our borders, will be the first ones to get it. And that's where my family came from.
Well, let me ask you a question. This is going to step back. I mean, it's going to be almost unrelated. So, I mean, I did listen, and I much appreciate it. I love hearing about your family history. But I'll be honest with you. I know this is your map. I know it's for your country.
Yeah.
Why does it say anything about point value on here? I mean, what does that mean? How does that relate to you? I'm just trying to understand, because I'm looking at the map and I see the territories and I see, but it seems as though you have additional numbers on your map that I may not have on mine, and I'm just trying to see what your benefit is, or if there is any benefit of having to label point values within the territory. I just don't see. I'm trying to understand what the necessity and having that on your map is.
This came from the last negotiation that tried to come between our nations, and they came to the point that they were assigning point values to areas, trying to decide how we could divvy up points.
Right.
That's ludicrous. We are not, and so I had the intelligence guys edit the map, so these are new marks, and it was photocopied, so you can't really see it. I should have crossed these out. I didn't think about it because I didn't even see the points. I saw this is an area with the people in it. So those point values are more a point along, or more information along my exact position here, is that we're treating this area like a place to divvy up, and I get that both of us can benefit from it, but it's not just points. And if you treat it like that, then all of us are going to say, well, is this truly 30 points? Is this truly 20 points? No, because both of us get all of this area. So who cares how many points it is? Because both of us protect it. So I'm not trying to do a point system. That's what's been done in the past, and clearly it hasn't worked because we're already at a point of war. So throw that out. We need to stop trying to see this as who can get the most, because that's how all countries do it. And you watch, history is doomed to repeat itself. You look at Rome. Rome is at the same position that America's in. They rose to power, and then they got obsessed with luxury, and they fell. The same point you can watch with this. If you start treating territories as points, there will always be a fight over who has the most points.
Oh, so, I'm curious as to why you have that on your map. I mean,
yeah,
I'm just trying to make it clear. I'm just trying to make it clear that you're not just in this for any point allegation.
No. And I'd like to make it clear that perhaps that's something that both of us kind of got screwed on walking into this.
I think we had a misunderstanding there because...
Well, you didn't know about the map that came from the previous negotiation. I didn't know about the peoples that were in this area. And that's my point, is there's so much distrust and so much miscommunication. That's how World War I started. And World War II was all about Germany crossing lines and just crossing every single one that they could. So if we keep drawing lines over the lines that we've already drawn, then we're just crossing more and more until we come to a point where somebody says, no, this is my line. Throw that out and just say, this is a point of neutrality. It works with Switzerland for the United Nations. Even the biggest nations in the world can share a space. Israel has been contested since the dawn of civilization got there. That's always been a point of contention. This is just between us. Because even if you look at the Koreas, how long have they fought over land? Whereas everybody else sees them as Korea, but in their minds they've convinced themselves that they're different. Do we want to be the same, where it's decades long, where bigger countries come in and try to help us out, and we're just back to the point that we started? This can only start and end with us. And I think that's best, to try to start creating just some trust between us by leaving this area neutral. And I know that that's going to take some pushing on your end. It's already going to take some on mine, but I'm sick and tired of just from the people's standpoint, which is who I represent. I don't represent the people that run this stuff. From the people, we don't want war. We don't care about the politics of it. We just want to be able to live and be able to pay our bills and to be able to live our life. That's all anybody wants. And I think this agreement, where we share this area, is going to create trust. And if the people in charge don't like it, the whole point of people being in charge is that they can be changed out. Because we have elections, we have...
I mean, well, what if they try to hold their independent elections within the neutral area? I mean, don't you have a concern that these people could still contest? I mean, because it's all fun and games that we make all these agreements. Unless we had that third party sitting with us right now, of those people who really they're not have allegiance to either of us, you know what I mean? They're independent entirely. I mean, really, where does that come to play? I mean... Well, at what point? I mean, aren't you concerned the fact if we aren't drawing a line, the fact that they very well might just take the area and then we're both shit out of luck?
Well, and I think I already addressed that, saying you've got two massive nations in one small area. If they tried that, and that's the thing.
But at what point? And if we both intervene, I mean, at what point do we start to fight each other? I mean, are we just trying to run them out of their own country? I mean, I feel like just by not having any allegiance within the area, there's just a really potential concern that if problems do arise, I mean, how do we take care of that? You know
but
what I mean?
I hear what you're saying, and I've thought about that a lot. But if we draw lines, we're already running them out of their territory.
But in a way that I mean, they're just joining a greater nation. I mean, in a way that we're going to give them.
In this point, they're joining two greater nations because we take joint ownership of the area. I mean, it's a neutral party, and so by taking joint ownership, it's both of ours. But we agree not to micromanage because it's just for the resources. So they technically are under both of us, and so that takes some extra negotiation, sure, obviously. But is that not better than drawing lines and then coming back to the table for war just a couple years later? Because it will happen, I guarantee you. Because that's not fixing the issue. That's just separating it for a while.
All right. Bottom line is, I really do think, while keeping everything 100% neutral and making agreements, I mean, I do see benefit. I also I just can't unsee the thought of the fact that I think we need some decisive territories, and whether if that mean I maybe get Area 2. I know you weren't very interested, and I have already spoken with people who live in the area there. A lot of them would be interested to work with my country and for their steel production, as well as working with any bordering nation who may be interested. I mean, I definitely see, while keeping Area 1 an area of which we both, obviously, the bottom line is we both need the resources. I mean, there's no other way. Like, both of our countries can't continue without Area 1 and both of us using the resources within it, which is great.
Yeah.
But I really do think within at least Area 2, we have some written, drawn line, because, I mean, frankly, you didn't even know about some areas within Area 2 that had people, living in it. I don't want to keep that neutral. I mean, especially if I already have the knowledge of it. Just by that alone, I feel like I'd be more qualified to be able to handle the resources and have more dominance within an area. Under the assumption that we're going to be trading, under the assumption that I will give you good deals. I mean, I'm only saying this with the thought that I definitely think there's, at least with Area 2, there is benefit of cutting the territory. And doesn't even sound like you have that much interest in the first place.
And the reason I didn't bring up Area 2 to the table is true. I don't know about it. But how does that make the Barkans feel that this area that's been right there is now, like, they've been... It represents opportunity to both of us. And if we give that to you completely, yes,
all right,
this area is...
Let me cut you off real quick, though. Through this whole negotiation, your biggest concern was Area 1, how to split it up. If anything, at the beginning of the negotiation, Area 2, you almost said, screw it. I mean, you were very almost apt to just let me have it. Furthermore, we have discussed other additional details, all of which were relating to Area 1, as you wanted to mention, which is good. I mean, not to say that we shouldn't be talking about Area 1, but if I'm being honest, I'm the only party that has really even had interest in Area 2. And at this point, I feel like you're using that as somewhat of a bargaining tool. I just don't think that's fair. In a way that, and I'm already going out of my comfort zone with saying that I want to share Area 1 with you. I think we can both agree that if we share the area, there's going to be benefit. But, I mean, frankly, at this point, I don't even think... It doesn't even seem like you're interested in Area 2. I mean, the fact that I've had to bring it up 5 times, all separately, all of which you rebutted to, don't get me wrong, but at no point you even addressed Area 2 in the first place, let alone you even knew there were people who lived there. Let alone you didn't even know, I mean, you're mentioning the fact that you may have Barkan citizens who live near the border. I mean, you barely even knew people were in the area. If I cut a line with them, all your current citizens are still keeping where they live, don't get me wrong. I mean, I just think we need to at least cut some area. And the fact that, to be fair, going into this negotiation from the get-go, I will give it to you. You always had a good sense of, utilitarian, just in the way that we can do what's best for all of us, right?
Right.
And at the same time, Area 2, I mean...
But allow me to cut you off for a second.
Sure.
The reason I didn't mention Area 2 is because I wanted to focus on Area 1 because I knew that's where your people needed. I offered Area 2, if you recall, in the very beginning of the negotiation as steel production because that's what I knew about it.
Sure.
And we tried to stay out for recon for the sole purpose is to not upset your nation because we're trying to avoid a war. And since that is something that we've known of you being interested in, from a military side, we want to look into it to see, because if you have somebody that's going to go to war, you want to know why somebody's interested in it. But on the other hand, I didn't want to ignite the powder keg. So that's the reason. It's not that we don't care about Area 2, it's that I was trying to give you the respect to talk about what you needed first and hammer that out. Area 2, to me, is a place of opportunity for us because it is an untapped land that even Corden hasn't looked at, to our knowledge, because we've asked them about it. And we tried, and we tried, and we tried.
And we have as well. We have as well.
And so that's my point, is I know that you're out of your comfort zone, but don't you think I'm out of mine? I'm trying very, very hard to stay. I wasn't trying to offload it onto you. I wasn't saying I didn't want it. I wanted to try to be free. I was just trying to probe to see what you wanted without actually saying, accusing you of not telling me what you wanted. So I didn't want to make it seem so caustic. So I tried to stay laid back because I knew of your interest already. And honestly, I know that there's more Barkans going into that area to get some recon because we were concerned about how little we knew. And so since we agreed on a negotiation, that's honestly open territory. And so we're trying to learn about it because it's all until unbeknownst to us. And I thought that I was giving a lot of ground by giving you that coal deposit because it's so much more massive than anything in that area. And Barkan would have taken it for themselves. But I wanted to give that as a sign of goodwill because that doesn't affect anybody that could potentially
to further extend what you're saying, I mean, that is something I want to gladly accept. I mean, I think that is one part of our agreement. I think we could both say. Yeah, because, I mean, frankly...
But, like I said, my line is in the sand is, if we're keeping this neutral, but you get all this, how does that come back to me?
I don't mean all of it either. I mean, I just think between the two areas, at least one of them needs set boundaries. I mean, in Area 1, it really seemed that really is a stalemate. We both equally need it. Area 2,
Area 2, we really do need the steel to produce. And we, honestly, do you have any idea the magnitude of resources in that area? Do either of us? Have you done the recon to truly know what Area 2 holds?
Well, I mean, as I said,
I need a yes or no on that one.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. And to the extent of which, I mean, I have done way more extensive research than you have. I did know people are living there. Yeah. And additionally, I mean, I do know, as you know, I didn't even really know about the coal deposit. I mean, if anything, you are sharing information that I didn't know about.
But you didn't tell us about the people or the research that you did into it, so both of us had to protect ourselves.
For sure. I mean, that was one of the first things I addressed about Area 2, though. I mean, at no point I was trying to withhold. So I'm just saying that I feel like you're just being redundant in a way that I think we have both established what we knew about it. I mean, don't accuse me of trying to withhold something. I already pretty much laid out everything I know about Area 2.
And I'm just saying that the coal deposit was one of the first things I brought up about Area 2.
For sure.
So, you have said that Barkan has withheld information from you. So I'm trying to point out that yes, it's redundant, but that's because I'm trying to make it clear that both nations have done the same tricks over and over again, and that's why we're in the position.
And that's why we're cutting it right now. I mean, I'm telling you everything that I know.
But if we cut this, how in the world does that reduce tension between Barkan and Arak? Because as soon as you cut this saying, okay, we're sharing Area 1, but yeah, we'll set up a we're drawing lines, not physical lines on a map. We're drawing tight agreements that are binding, or we come back to work, which is the same point that we're in. I know that's redundant, but I'm trying to tell you that if we draw lines, we are in the same spot that we've been talking about this entire time. So I know that you are very intent on drawing lines, but I just do not think that is the way to get an agreement between our countries. It does not work ever. So my point
in a way, why are you trying to give me the coal deposit then?
Because
in a way, that is drawing a line. I mean, you're essentially going against your own thought process.
I'm not drawing a line. I'm saying that I'm relinquishing our agreement, because just like we did in Area 1, we're dividing the timber, we're dividing the fruits, and we're dividing the vegetables and all the resources in that area. I'm saying that we won't even divide this with you. You can have it. We're not taking that from you, and we're trying to help your country prosper. That's not drawing a line. That's saying this is part of the agreement of those resources of that area. And until, and this one's more open-ended, which is why it's a little bit less talked about on my side, because we need to do more recon, but we can't do that until we have a peaceful agreement, so that I know that if I come into this area, your people aren't going to threaten war saying, well, that should be ours. And if you've already talked to those people about them joining your company or your country, that makes me more uncomfortable, because then I don't want to step on any toes politically that I shouldn't. So that's why I think a shared area is best, because as soon as you talk to those people, that immediately alienated them to mine. And so if we try to share those resources, then I'm sharing them with an alienated state. So if you make it neutral and we both get in on that agreement, I think that's the only way to go forward, and that's my line in the sand. Because after discussing all of our resources and needs, I don't think that there's any agreement that can be drawn with lines. And that's where I'm going to put this, because I couldn't do that at the beginning because we hadn't talked. We hadn't talked to each other, and after talking to each other, this is the only agreement where one of us doesn't get screwed, and you don't have like a general that's in the Congress saying, oh, we got screwed because this idiot gave up this much. And that's what will happen to me. And then it's out of my hands and we have war anyway. Because if there's anything that I learned in life, it's that just because you can do your job, that doesn't mean that you're a good employee. You also have to keep in mind of the bureaucracy and the politics, which I know we both don't want to have to deal with. But it is the reality that if you take that, there's going to be somebody's ego that gets stepped on and says, well, why do they get to delegate that part? And I know that you're going to share the resources, but the entire idea is that a line was drawn in a room with only two people. So if we leave the lines drawn where they are, and we just agree to share this, I know that's a tough road, but from my line, that's the only road that won't lead to a long-lasting war. And even if it comes back to another negotiation, so be it. Like I said, we got ourselves out of a hole, because both of us are in a bad spot right now.
My biggest concern is by keeping it all neutral. I mean, ultimately, all it would take is one misunderstanding, and we would be right back at square one. I mean,
but my point is, if we draw the line, one misunderstanding, and we're already past square one in the war, because the line was drawn, and that's the exact thing that happened with World War I.
But if you draw a line, that, in my opinion, actually cuts off any misunderstanding. I mean, by drawing a line and making specific territories, that
well,
is
no,
where
think about how long.
Yes, well,
yes.
we are. How far along are we?
What did you say?
We're like 50 minutes in.
How far along are we in the process?
We're like about an hour in almost.
Would you say we're about?
No.
No.
I don't think so.
I think you have a stalemate because I have to go through my next class.
All right, you want to say that we'll come back to this? All right, we're done.
We're done. Hey.